Hey guys, what's going on? James here, and in this video today, we are going to be reviewing the Tampa Bay Buccaneers 30-27 loss in the divisional round of the playoffs to the Los Angeles Rams. And I am not alone in this review today. Joining me from the Cannon Fire podcast, it is Rhett. Rhett, how you doing today?
As good as I can be, man. It's tough to lose a game like that. Heartbreaking is quite the understatement. But at the end of the day, I think the only thing you can feel about this team is proud the way that they chose to fight their way back into the game. They had plenty of chances to go out there and, finish the season the way that they looked like they were at halftime, down 20 points, but they're able to pull it out too little too late. I'm proud of this team.
I agree with that, man. I think proud is the best word to use. Everything, and I'll be talking about this more in a season review video, probably in a little bit later on here this week. But all the things the Tampa Bay Buccaneers have had to deal with this year in terms of injuries, and just all these other different types of things that have been going on, I'm proud of this team for fighting back, not laying down in the second half of this game, and really showing the grit that we've seen from them time and time again. And Rhett, I think that that's an important thing, regardless of the guys who do leave this team. And, again, we have a lot of time this year, this offseason, to talk about that. That grit is something that I think is going to stay with them for the rest of their careers, which I think is huge. So, Rhett, we're going to go ahead and go through the offense first, and then we are going to go through the defensive side of the football. Tom Brady, 30 of 54, 329 passing yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception, was sacked 3 times in this game. I believe he was also hit 6 times total in this game as well by that Rams pass rush, I guess I should say. What are your thoughts on Brady? What are your thoughts on the offensive line in this game?
Yeah, well, in week 3 against the Rams when the Bucs lost that game, Tom Brady threw the ball 55 times. That's not how they were going to win this game. Luckily, he didn't throw the ball 55 times. He only threw it 54. So, again, this game kind of got away from the Bucs offense, which, of course, is going to force the pass in most of the second half because they were playing from behind. But most of the woes that this team had in the first half on the offensive side of the ball started with the offensive line. You knew the Bucs were going in shorthanded. You're missing an all-pro right tackle in Tristan Wirfs. So you send Josh Wells out there. That went about as good as you expected it to, considering he's playing against a defensive line that consists of Aaron Donald, Leonard Floyd, and Vaughn Miller. 2 of those guys, future Hall of Famers. So it's important to remember that, they were going into it shorthanded, but they just weren't giving Tom any time to throw in that first half. Truthfully, I mean, the guy has a 2-second release, but he's not going to find the open receiver in 2 seconds every single time. And that was the downfall of this team. While Tom only did get sacked 3 times, it seemed like he got hit about 3 times that amount, because there were linemen in his face on what felt like every offensive snap of that first half. So once they started to give Tom a little bit of time to work, that's when you saw them make their way back into the game, take advantage of some turnovers by the Rams in the second half, and they were able to put some points up. A couple of plays where Tom had more time than he usually did, and he was able to make stuff happen. But, that's really where things started for this team in the first half. As far as what went wrong for them was just the offensive line and their ability or lack thereof to create a safe pocket for Tom Brady in the first half of the game, and the Bucs had to play from behind.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%, man. I mean, they were down a lot of guys, right? Wirfs was down at right tackle. Then Josh Wells was his replacement. He got knocked out of the game for certain chunks of the game. So then you had Nick Leverett. It was just the continuation of the story of this Bucs season, which has been injuries, and even more injuries, right? And unfortunately for the Bucs offense specifically, it was really too much for them to handle for most of this game. I mean, especially that first half. You talked about it. They had a very, very rough first half. But in the case of Brady, in that second half, he was fantastic. He led the Tampa Bay Buccaneers to have a chance to win that game. Of course, the defense fell through in the end. We'll talk about that whenever we talk about the defensive side of the football. I agree with everything that you said there in regards to Brady, how he played in the first half and in the second half as well, and also the offensive line. In regards to the skill position players on the offensive side of the football, Leonard Fournette, 13 carries, 51 yards, 2 rushing touchdowns. He also finished with 9 receptions for 56 yards on 9 targets. Mike Evans, 8 receptions on 16 targets for 119 yards and a touchdown. Rob Gronkowski, 11 targets with 4 receptions for 85 yards. You also had Scotty Miller pitching in with 4 receptions on 38 yards. Your thoughts on the skill position players in this game?
Yeah, man. First we'll talk about playoff Lenny. I think Leonard Fournette had as good of a start as we would have hoped he had coming back from injury in the playoffs. The Bucs kept him out versus the Eagles because he wasn't 100%. Well, today he looked about as close to 100% as he has all season. So it was good to see him out there. A couple of really good carries for him to start the game. 2 first downs on that opening drive for Tampa Bay. But again, just like I said, whenever the Bucs went to the pass and once this game started to go out of hand, they got away from the run game. Lenny only finished with 13 carries. He did end up being a factor in the pass game, but again, that's just playoff Lenny in full effect. You know what I mean? He found the end zone 2 times, so he was able to put up some points, especially in crunch time. But as far as Leonard Fournette, I definitely think he earned a spot on this Bucs roster next year, and hopefully his performance today is something that they can think about going forward. Mike Evans, I was so excited to see Mike Evans. People know that I'm the biggest Mike Evans fan on the planet. He's probably one of my favorite guys on the roster right now, if not, top 2. But it was good to see him be that guy, because that was another question mark before the Bucs went on this playoff run is, Chris Godwin's missing due to injury. Antonio Brown had his classic meltdown, left the team. So what's going to happen with Mike Evans? He hasn't had to be that guy in a long time for Tampa Bay, and he was forced to be that guy. And 2 weeks in a row, he proved that he can be that guy for the Bucs. He had a great performance week 18, final game of the season against the Panthers, put up over 100 yards against the Eagles, put up over 100 yards today, and had the most clutch touchdown of the game, in my opinion, to make it 20-27 there at the tail end. One of Tom Brady's best passes of the season. Absolutely cooked Jalen Ramsey. I think this playoff run for Mike Evans solidified him as a number 1 wide receiver in the NFL. In my opinion, he's top 5, always has been. But when you're playing next to Chris Godwin and Antonio Brown, sometimes people lose sight of that. And luckily, Mike Evans getting that higher workload showed he was more than prepared for it. And that's the best feeling that I had. Also, Scotty Miller got a couple of catches. He made one great sideline catch. So it was good to see Scotty go out there and put some more good film up. But yeah, man, I mean, the guys who stepped up, unfortunately, too little too late. But, as far as the stars, as far as the guys on offense that needed to carry you in this game, I felt like when things finally started to turn for the Bucs, Mike Evans, Leonard Fournette, they were definitely out there doing their part.
And for all the good that was there, with Mike Evans, he's fantastic. We all know this, right? It's still shocking to me that people still doubt Mike Evans. So he was fantastic in this game. And then the case of, Leonard Fournette, he did exactly what you said, exactly what you thought Leonard Fournette would go in there and do as a running back and a receiving back as well. We'll talk about whether or not he will or will not re-sign with Tampa Bay at a later date. But for this game, it was everything that you wanted him to do. Unfortunately, like you said, too little too late. And just for the offense as a whole, Rhett, there were some missed opportunities. There was an interception in the first half. There was a fumble by Tom Brady that was recovered by the Rams. Thankfully, the Rams would fumble the very next play, but then you had 2 turnovers on downs in a row, which we'll probably talk about that with the refereeing a little bit, a few calls that they made towards the end of this video. But there was unfortunately it was too little too late in the first, in the second half based on how the first half went, and then they just missed 1 or 2 opportunities in the second half that I feel really cost this comeback in this game. Would you agree with that?
No, yeah. It felt like there were a lot more chances that the Bucs had to win this game towards the tail end there that, they could have taken advantage of, or simply were just put in a position to not be able to. I know he said we'll wait till later to talk about the officiating, but one that I think about is, the late hit on Mike Evans from Eric Weddle. It was a turnover on downs, and it was ruled a dead ball play because the ball had hit the ground, and that's when the hit came in. I don't know the technicality of the call, but it's a stupid call. I don't care who you were rooting for. It was a terrible call. And unfortunately, for another week in a row in the NFL, it seems like these referees have had more than their fair share of dictating the tone of a game for a certain team. It's unfortunate, but it is what it is. There's nothing we can do about it. I still think the Bucs did more than enough to lose this game. And the fact that they were playing as close as they were towards the end of it is a factor of how they can recover and how talented they are, but they still were not the better team, so it's hard for me to get hung up on the officiating stuff because I'm not going to be mad about it this time next season, but just it's still trying to get over stuff like that. And I think it is a real problem in the NFL though, is the behavior of some of these officials, because even Sean Hachuli, who was the one who had words with Tom Brady, he came out and said that, he threw the flag on Tom Brady because what did he say? I don't have the direct quote in front of me, but he basically
said that he was very aggressive along those
right.
lines.
He made a aggressive
remarks
I have it right
or
here.
Comments or whatever it may be.
Yeah, he said, quote, "He got in my face in an aggressive manner, used abusive language. As for the hit, we did not think that it rose to the level of roughing the passer." Tom Brady was bleeding. I can't tell you the last time I watched an NFL game and saw a quarterback bleeding on his face from a hit that he took from a defensive lineman, but Brady was saying that it was a blow to the head and he was bleeding from his lip. I think this official let his feelings get into the equation, and we got the call that we got, and it's very unfortunate.
Yeah, I got to agree with you there in terms of the officiating on the offensive side. There's a couple of things that happened on the defensive side for the Bucs that I think were understandable from the referee's perspective, but in the case of Mike Evans and in the case of Tom Brady's situations, those I don't 100% agree with. But like you said, there's nothing we can do about it now, and that wasn't even the full deciding factor as to why the Bucs lost this game. But it is still frustrating nonetheless, and it sets a precedent for future games.
There were very critical parts of the game, especially the Mike Evans call. But, the two other calls that people talked about early on, Ndamukong Suh got the taunting call, and then Lavonte David, of all people, got the unsportsmanlike conduct for throwing his helmet on the field in frustration after that 72-yard Cooper Kupp touchdown. I think both of those instances, for example, it's just the Bucs and what led to them falling apart the way that they did in the first half. It was the emotions getting to them. And Ndamukong Suh, as much of a veteran as he is, people can not like the call, but he should know better to not point. It's a new rule in the NFL, and unfortunately, you got to play by those rules. And as for Lavonte David, he's not a guy that gets emotional, but he let it get to him, and that's what led to the flag.
Right. So, just talking real quick about the defensive side of the football too, and then we're gonna, kind of wrap this up talking about special teams. I agree with your takes on the Lavonte David Suh penalties. I think that was on those guys, especially the one with Suh. You can't be doing stuff like that in today's NFL. They'll call stuff like that now. But kind of going into more of the specifics of the guys on defense. Rhett, a lot of people are gonna say this defense struggled in this game, and they did. It's especially, at certain points in the first half, and then, obviously towards the end of the second half. I really don't want to, get into great details of, super specifics here of the defense, Rhett, but is there anybody who really kind of jumped off the page towards you? I mean, Raheem Nunez-Roche has 2 tackles for loss. Vita Vea had 2 quarterback hits. He had a sack and a tackle for loss. There's a couple of other guys as well who made plays. I know Ndamukong Suh forced a fumble that was recovered by JPP. I know there was another forced fumble as well, or a couple of them actually.
Well, the forced fumble, it was the bad snap that Matt Stafford wasn't expecting, and the Bucs were able to take advantage of it. They got the recovery there. I don't remember who. But Ndamukong Suh was probably the guy I was going to say. I think that forced fumble that he had was just such a critical point of the game, and I know the Bucs lost the ball the very next play. But again, the way that this thing played out, they got another chance to come back and try and win it with another fumble. So I will say, as far as guys that jumped out to me in a good way, was Sean Murphy Bunting. And it's unfortunate, but I think this was probably SMB's worst game of his career. The guy was missing tackles left and right. In coverage, he wasn't too bad, but execution just wasn't there when it needed to be. And listen, I will cut him some slack because the guy missed half of the regular season with injury, that elbow injury week 1 that took him out. Sometimes it's hard to come back from injury. And this was the first time all season that the Buccaneers had all 11 starters on defense playing together for like the first time all season. You know what I mean? So obviously there were some miscommunication errors out there every now and again, and that's on the other guys as well. And I'm sure we'll talk about it more. But the guy who stood out to me the most today on defense was just SMB because it wasn't a very characteristic performance of him.
Stood out for not the best reasons.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right. So I mean, I agree with you there, man. In terms of the defense, it was, in the first half, I don't put that all on them because the offense was stalling, turnovers, whatever you want to call it, right? So the defense was out there a lot. And in the second half, I thought they actually really did a good job of stepping up to the occasion, being able to do what they need to do to take care of business and get the job done. But Red, I know a lot of people are going to talk about this one play, and I want your thoughts and opinions on it. The blitz at the end of the game that resulted in the Cooper Kupp long catch that in turn resulted in the game-winning field goal from Matt Gay for the Rams. What are your thoughts on that play? Because I know a lot of people are going to be asking about it. Just real quick, and I'll get your opinions on that, and then I'll give my opinions.
Yeah, I mean, if there's one thing we know for sure is that Todd Bowles is a guy who will live and die by the blitz. He is one of the most blitzing coordinators in the entire NFL. The Bucs averaged right around 44% of their defensive snaps were blitzes throughout the year. That's quite a bit. I'm pretty sure they were first in the league in that category. But today he fell on his sword, and we saw it. Levante David did say in his post-game press conference that there was some miscommunication on that final play. Some guys missed some assignments. Some guys didn't. He said it was an all-out blitz, but some guys just didn't get that call, I guess, and that's what led to mixed up coverages and everybody kind of messing up their assignments at some point. But, it is what it is, man. We talked headed into the game that if the Bucs wanted to slow down Matt Stafford, they needed to probably take a break from the blitz every now and again and maybe rely on their front four to get some pressure. And they just weren't able to get the pressure. And then in crunch time, they blitz against Matt Stafford. Matt Stafford statistically is probably the best quarterback in the NFL playing against the blitz in 2021 for that season. So you get what you get. It was a very high risk, high reward play. I understand why they did it. I know that Bowles was kind of looking for the home run, right? Because if you can get a sack, you can force them out of field goal range. It makes it a much different game. You're playing for overtime at that point. So I understand what he was going for, but well, they actually weren't even in field goal range when he sent the blitz. Sorry. So let me correct myself really quickly here. It would have put them even further out of field goal range. It would have put them at, as far away as they would have been.
Yeah, I got to agree with you there, man. I just don't understand the call. And obviously you can't doom a guy. You can't doom a game for only one call, right? Now, it was a crucial call at the end of the game, and it's not the only reason as to why the Tampa Bay Buccaneers lost this game. That's an important distinction to make there. But it was a questionable call in the most crucial moment in the game. So you do have to question it there. I don't think that that's, a nail in the coffin of Todd Bowles as the defensive coordinator. I still think he's a good defensive coordinator. I still think he may very well get a head coaching job, which now, heck, we may be hearing about that in the next week or two, depending on how the rest of this season shakes up. And, again, but it was a weird call. I'm not an NFL defensive coordinator, Rhett. Neither of us are. But, definitely playing like a preventative type defense would have probably been more so the call there. And I think we can both agree on that. But finally, Rhett, the last thing I want to mention here is the special teams unit was not great in this game. Ryan Suckup missed a field goal. Bradley Pinion had 2 kickoffs go out of bounds, which gave the Rams basically 15, maybe even 20 free yards in certain situations. And then also the return game still wasn't good with Jalen Darden, and it didn't get much better with Giovani Bernard. Part of that was because of the returners themselves. Part of that was because of the punt coverage unit. So Oh, what were your thoughts on special teams as a whole, just kind of breaking it down as a list?
Yeah, man, I'll be honest, it's hard to stay mad at Ryan Suckup because although he did miss a very crucial kick in the game, he makes that kick. It's 33-30 at the end of that game. It's a very different situation for the Bucs if they get the scores that they do when they do. But Matt Gay also missed a kick, so it's almost like both teams left points on the board. So I'm not going to be too hung up over a missed field goal. But as much of a big fan as I am of Bradley Pinion, unfortunately, I think he might have kicked his way out of a job for the Bucs next year with his performance. It wasn't even really the punts that were all too bad. He had one that bounced into the end zone that was a touchback that probably could have been a much better punt had someone got there in time. But the two kickoffs going out of bounds, that just can't happen, man. I mean, one is obviously inexcusable, but two of them is just absolutely it hurts the team. It sets up the Rams at the 40-yard line, basically puts them at midfield, and that's just not what the Bucs need. And then, as far as like the returner aspect as well, I know that's a hot topic. Jalen Darden, unfortunately, he's not the guy. If the Bucs want to hold out hope and see if he can develop, go for it. But I just don't think there's going to be a whole lot there. He is a draft pick, and it's a shame. Maybe down the road you can start to get him involved on offense a little bit more, see if he has some use there. But as far as a returner goes, I think the Bucs are definitely going to be in the market of somebody who can just go out there and has experience returning and can be effective at setting you up with positive yardage as opposed to running side to side and taking that stuff away from you.
For sure. So I agree with a lot of what you said there. We'll see what they do with Bradley Pinion. And, at the end of the day, we'll see what they do with Ryan Suckup as well, some of these other guys on all aspects of the team, right? Because now, hey, the Bucs are in the offseason. Unfortunately, the season's done. There's going to be a lot of decisions that have to be made here, a lot of decisions. And we're going to be talking about all of that as the offseason progresses. So it's going to be a lot. But folks, let us know your thoughts about this down in the comments section below. We would love to hear your guys' thoughts and opinions. Rhett, I want to thank you again for being on here. It is greatly appreciated. For everybody who has not already subscribed to the Cannon Fire podcast, go subscribe to them. I will have a link to their channel down in the pinned comment in the comment section down below. And I'll also be having another video coming out here in the next couple of days as a season review, right? For the Tampa Bay Buccaneers as a whole. But Rhett, just kind of get your thoughts on this. I for one am proud of this team and how they were able to do things this year. They overcame a lot of adversity. What are your thoughts on this team now that the season is done?
Yeah, like we said at the start of the video, all I can feel is proud. I think the season, no matter how you look at it, I think it was a success. You're the defending Super Bowl champions. Obviously, you bring back everybody in hopes of going for a run, going for two, as everybody had put it. But it's very tough to win back-to-back championships in the NFL. That's why a team hasn't done it in 17 years. But for what the Bucs were able to do this season, they finished as the 2 seed in the NFC. A lot of people had counted them out after their losses to the Saints and then Washington. They finished as the 2 seed. They won a playoff game pretty handily, might I add, given the injuries that they had. And the fact that they set a franchise record for wins, 13 wins in a season, with as many injuries as they had, there's a lot of great things to be taken away from this Buccaneers team. And the resiliency that they showed in games against the Jets, in games against the Colts, when they were down more than 2 possessions, they came back, they won those games. And that's the story of this Bucs team. It kind of always has been. Since Tom Brady has gotten here, it is amplified a little bit, but the Bucs have always been a team that goes down swinging, and they know how to make it entertaining. And I'm glad that they made the season as fun as it was. 13-4, 13 wins. It was a good season, and I'm glad the Buccaneers had the playoff run that they did. We don't entirely know if Tom Brady's going to be back. I think the assumption is yes, he is. James and I probably feel like he will be. Most people do, especially people within the organization, I'm sure. But, I mean, we just got to be grateful for what we have. And what we have right now is a team that can reload over the course of the offseason, and they can go on another Super Bowl run next year. Like, the Bucs are contenders, and they will continue to be contenders for the foreseeable future, which is a great feeling.
Absolutely, man. I agree with you 100% on your thoughts on there. you got to be proud of this team and what they were able to do, given all the things that happened to them this year. My God, it was not easy.
Yeah.
And, you know, hey, they still made a deep playoff run, which I feel you got to give them credit for that. And we'll see what they can do to retool and, you know, upgrade and make the changes that they need to make to be better next year. So we'll wait and see. But, folks, again, thank you so much for watching this video. I hope y'all enjoyed. Leave your thoughts and opinions about this game down in the comment section below. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next video or the next live stream. But until then, and as always, guys, goodbye for now, and go Bucs. Okay, we are good.
Cool.
Let me hear the audio.